Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. Today's episode is about redefining recovery, not through restriction or perfection, but through learning how food actually fuels your body. Today, we are privileged to have Ashley Olson with us today. Her journey shows that healing from ultra processed food doesn't require guilt or control, but rather awareness, balance, and compassion. And we are lucky to have her partner, Andrea, who co-hosts the Double A podcast with us here today as well. And we will be getting into her a little bit later. But today we're going to hyper focus on Ashley. She is an owner and personal trainer. And Ashley's fitness journey began in her teens and evolved through years of trial and error with cardio, restrictive eating, and short term solutions. Like many, she experienced weight gain, loss of confidence, and frustration when approaches that once worked no longer did. Everything changed when she discovered strength training and learned how to properly fuel her body with balanced nutrition. Letting go of calorie fear and embracing sustainable habits transformed not only her body, but her mindset. Over the past decade, Ashley's greatest transformation has been mental. She's confident, empowered, and no longer defined by the scale. Inspired by her journey, Ashley founded Carve Fitness Studio, a space focused on functional, foundational strength training and science backed education. Her mission is to guide, support, and empower others to build strength, confidence, and lasting results through sustainable fitness and nutrition practices. That is quite a background, girl. Tell your story. I mean, we're all on the edge of our seats leaning in now, and we just are like, tell us more, tell us more, tell us more. What got you to this place where you're sitting in the seat today? So there's a story in there, and we want to know what it is.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Paige, and thanks so much for having us on. And yeah, my journey really, I, yes, my journey started in my teens because I don't know if you remember Tybo with Billy
Oh, sure.
Banks. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yes. That was
Mm-hmm.
so I was homeschooled. So that was my PE that I did and I loved it. I truly did. And that was my first introduction to like actually working my body. My mom was never into fitness or anything like that. I also was not into sports. So I don't have a sports background or anything like that. And then when I entered my college years, I did pretty good the first couple of years and then, those oh, what was it? Home style chicken sandwiches from Wendy's with the large Dr. Pepper and the extra large fries. I'm pretty sure I ate those every day. They started adding up and my clothes started not
Mm-hmm.
fitting so great. And so back
Mm-hmm.
then, okay, I just cut out the Diet Coke. Or the Dr. Pepper, sorry, and I had Diet Dr. Pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Easy and the weight came off. And then
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that I put on the happy marriage weight when me and my husband got married because I was now eating, cooked meals at home every night and making things that I never would have made, before marriage. And so I put on that weight and just cutting back on calories suddenly wasn't doing the trick anymore. And so that's where I got into a place of just not loving how my clothes were fitting. I was not confident at all and was, in fact, going through a really hard season in my life at the time. And so I turned to fitness. And actually, I wasn't just strength training to begin with, I turned to running. And I absolutely hate running. And I hated running all the time that I was running, but it was now working again that I was losing weight. But every week I was having to pack on more miles to keep up with keeping the weight off. Because as you may know, just because you're doing cardio doesn't mean you are burning fat. You're actually burning some muscle too. So I wasn't building that lean muscle mass that we now know is so vital. And so, fast forward, a girlfriend invited me to a strength training boot camp for women. And that was the first organized place that I've really lifted weights and was taught how to lift weights and not only lift weights, but lift heavy and really challenge the body in the gym. and I fell in love. I saw a transformation, not only, like you said, with my body, but my mind. I became so much more confident. I was realizing how capable I was as a human and that my body was capable of so much more than I even realized. And so through that, my interest peaked for nutrition and how I can get even better with my strength training. And so I worked with a coach and she taught me what a protein was. I had no idea. I never framed it in that sense of what is a protein? What does it do for my body? What is a carb? How does it help me? What is a fat? What does it do? And so I just really started, I was a sponge and just absorbing all this information. And it really transformed my mind into looking at food as a true fuel source instead of just something that I needed to survive. And when I actually prioritized my protein and balancing out my carbs and my fats, I noticed a significant increase in how my workouts felt and how I didn't have those afternoon crashes and I was sleeping really well. And so, as the decades have come from my start of my journey, I've thanked Andrea so much because she has really helped me realize how food can be medicine too for our bodies. And with my background of basically macros,
Hmm.
now I can see the benefit of how whole sources of food truly benefit our body. And instead of just focusing on the macro part, I can focus on the whole food source and have that beautiful combination of both for myself. And now it's just like it's like life-giving.
How did you two meet?
Why don't you tell the story, Andrea?
Hi, thanks for having us on, Paige.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I actually was forced into meeting Ashley. This wasn't something that I chose. Um,
We
I
we
asked the right
literally
question.
drug I literally drug her in.
I, I'm an introvert and I tend to go into a cave and I don't have this. I love people. Obviously, I couldn't do what I do if I didn't love people, but yeah, going out and finding people is not necessarily my forte. And so I had this
She'll
very
find the people, but she books an appointment and it's a time limit.
right. Right. And we're done. Um, but no, there was a mutual friend that I was renting space in her building, and then Ashley was also sort of renting the gym as a trainer for her clients. And so anyway, my friend that was the business owner, she said, "Oh, you've got to come to Ashley's boot camp class," and nothing sounded worse to me than that. So I went by force and I thought, okay, well, that is over. I'm glad that that's over. And then
So
she
she
just
was
kept
so
coming around.
sneaky. So she was so sneaky. She's like, "I'll just pay for pay every
Oh,
week at
I
a
know.
time."
So,
Because
so I would pay Ashley for the class, but I would pay each time that I went because I knew that I wasn't coming back the next time. So why would I pay for classes that I
Right.
wasn't going to go to? And finally, I paid her one time, and she was like, "You know what? Why don't you just go ahead and pay me for the rest of the month?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's a choice. That's an option that I could do." And so I did that. And I mean, every time before that class would start, every time I would sit out in the parking lot, just white knuckling the steering wheel, like, please, Lord, I don't want to go in there. And finally, it started catching, and Ashley is just she's such a force of nature. She's a delightful person. I love her with every cell in my body. And we just really hit it off. And we've kind of been inseparable from a state and a half away ever since. So
Crazy.
that was what, oh, 10 years ago this year.
yeah,
10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So,
The
and
rest is
and
history.
you'll hear it on my episode, but she's been
Okay.
an absolute game changer for me too. I wouldn't be where I am today without Ashley, in
Wow.
so many ways.
well,
Um,
right
Wow.
back at you.
mm.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I want to tie this back into something that said. I clocked this when you said I was having a bad time and I turned to fitness. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's a loaded statement. You were having a bad time and you just turned to fitness and then all of a sudden you're in the fitness industry. There had to be something in there, a defining moment where, I mean, do you just turn to fitness one day and say, okay, this is what I'll do?
Well, because I was so no, there's not. I was actually when I started running, I was in the banking industry. I loved my job. And I'm a faith believer. Don't believe anything is done by accident. And you know, with how God works in my life and our lives, he nudges us in certain directions and allows certain doors to close while others are opening. And so the door of my banking career came to a close, and I went into academia. And I was working for the College of Engineering as the executive assistant to the dean. Loved my job, absolutely loved it. And as fate would have it, a new dean came into play, and he just was basically wanting to clean house. So he's making everybody's lives miserable in the dean department. And so this was when I was starting to get into weights, and I was really passionate about my newfound love of strength training, and I was really just doing it for myself. And then I was so excited about my progress and it was doing to my life that I was telling my friends about it, and we would start meeting at the YMCA there in downtown Wichita.
Oh, wow. Get
Yes,
out of here.
and we would meet up and do our 5:30 workouts, get dressed, and go to work. And that lasted for probably a couple of years. And then when the new dean came in and was basically making life super miserable, I knew my time was coming to an end. And my trainer at the time actually had been for a year plus encouraging me to become a personal trainer. And I just told her, no, I'm not smart enough for that. Like that's not what I want to do. And so it basically came to my wits end with my current role at the college so I said, you know what? They're actually offering a certification class this weekend. If I can pass it, I will consider. And
Mm-hmm.
so I joke it's the first textbook I ever read. I was just enthralled with the information,
Hmm.
and I was like, wow, is this what it's like to like love what you're doing?
Yeah.
And so I took the exam, absolutely loved it. And so I think that next week, my trainer friend called me and said, hey, I have a client for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like really already? And to this day, we're best of friends, that first client, and she's worked with me off and
Oh,
on throughout the years. She lives there in
hmm.
Wichita.
Oh, nice.
But sh it just started a spark in me that I was like, oh, I didn't know that was there. And my passion for women was there in the beginning. I just didn't know it. It wasn't like something that was just a aha moment at first. So I trained both men and women for several years, but I really was seeing that passion for women to get into the gym. And when I started strength training, it was just on the cusp of women. It was becoming more popular for women to lift weights. Not the scene that we see now where women are, lifting on the regular. It was very still. I still remember a family member when I first started lifting being like, be careful, don't get too bulky.
Uh-huh.
And so
I
uh,
won't.
yeah, I was like, I think I'm okay.
Uh-huh.
So, that also was like, people or women need to know that lifting weights doesn't make you bulky. Like, you would have to do a lot of things, very, very weird things to be able to get the look that you think that I'm going to look by touching a barbell. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that story. And isn't it interesting how whenever you find what you really love, it's not work. If you love what you're doing, it's never work.
Yeah.
Right. And I love how you said you were just enthralled in learning that. I mean, it just, you're like a sponge. You can't get enough of it fast enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't wait to wake up and do it again the next day.
Yeah, even on the tire, I now that I own a brick and mortar, I'll will tell you there's days that it feels a little more work than it does, but it's not because of the people. The people are what drive me to keep going. It's the, mundane admin tasks that I'm just like, "Oh my gosh,
Right.
like this is the side of business that it doesn't bring the joy. It's when you see a woman pick up weights and not be scared anymore because they found a newfound strength that they didn't know they possessed, or maybe it's a woman that's coming in from. I have so many women that come in with chronic knee pain, and they're just like, I love running so much and I just want to get back to running. And I was like, well, I can't relate to you on the running part, but we can get you back there if you want. But then as they start lifting weights and they're not scared of it anymore and they're not afraid of doing these movements, they it literally transforms your life. It gives you a new lease on life, if you will. Because most of
Yeah.
my women, I mean, just to be honest, like personal training can be quite the investment, especially if you do one-on-one
Yeah.
training. And
Hmm.
so I do specialize in small groups, so it is a lot more feasible for women to come into the door, but it's still an investment. It's still a choice. It's
I agree.
like to Andrea's thing, it was a choice to pay me for that month. And so, it's like, okay, that feels a little more real. And
Hmm.
I have a lot of women that start with 1 day a week and then because they just want to dip their toe, they don't want to get too serious. And then before you know it, they're coming multiple times a week.
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it funny how you never know when one little decision is going to change that trajectory for the rest of your life? Isn't
Oh
that
my gosh,
fascinating?
for sure.
And since most of our audience are people that are recovering from the effects of ultra-processed food use disorder, let's get into the food part of it too, because I think one of our foundational pillars is movement that goes along
Yes.
with food, sleep, spirituality. And so I think they really travel in tandem because you had kind of talked about in the beginning, it was a weight issue that's driving you to get you to where you were with the exercise and then the weightlifting. And I think you intimated that a little bit of restriction had started to creep in, and you had to figure out your food, right, in order for things to work together cohesively and have the results you wanted. You want to
Yeah,
talk about what that journey was like with food and where you started and what you landed on finally that was the sweet spot?
absolutely. So I don't know if my mom knew all these things. I need to just ask her. But we weren't taught what a protein was, or I wasn't
Oh,
taught what a protein was. I wasn't taught what a carb and a fat were.
right.
And, in the 80s and 90s when I grew up, like what were those? The Ensure days, and Weight Atkins and all those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw them in my life, but it was never something that was drilled into me or anything like that. And I thank my mom highly for not creating a diet culture for myself.
Yeah.
She loved vegetables. I hated vegetables. I
Uh-huh.
loved the processed foods growing up. And she still to this day is like, I don't know who you are eating these things, but thankfully I came full circle. But to get back to the point of like the ultra process, I was eating literally Taco Bell, Wendy's, Whataburger. Like I was in Texas going through college. Like that was my life. My
Mm-hmm.
mom tried to make me smoothies, and I was like, those are gross. I would rather just wait a couple hours and go to Wendy's. But
Yeah.
it wasn't a conscious thing of like, is that process? Is that good for me? That didn't really register for my brain. And maybe it just takes me a little bit longer to get things through my head. But um, the thought of like, well, I just don't like how I fit my clothes, so I'll just restrict. That was definitely, that was obvious. Like if you want to lose weight, you just restrict calories.
Yeah, how'd that
Um,
work?
well, it worked
How'd
for a
that work?
time until
Uh-huh.
my calories were so low I couldn't sustain that. And so
Yeah,
then I might have been able to sustain that for, Monday through Friday, or maybe Monday through Thursday, but then
right.
the weekend was,
Double. Yeah.
double it. And then on top of that, through college, I was traveling at least once a month to go see my now husband, then boyfriend, up in Wichita, because that's where he was living. And so it was a whole weekend of just eating out. And then I would restrict Monday through Friday, be really good. And then, the weekends again. But I think where it really came to where I was actually, it wasn't so much of like I need to stop eating processed foods. It was more of a shift of like, oh, that's what a protein does for my body. It actually builds that lean muscle mass for me. And it wasn't like, well, that's a bad carb or this is a good carb. That really didn't honestly come back until I met Andrea and I really understood what food does for your body. And I still don't like to label food good or bad, but I do like to say, what will I feel like after I have that? Will I feel proud of myself or will I feel like it's going to reach me towards my goals? I can ask myself those questions. And I know you talked about it in the little intro, and it's not about restriction. It's about finding that balance. And when I really realized that one meal isn't what is derailing me and making me gain weight, it was the culmination of little bad decisions over time
Yeah.
that actually got me to the place that I wasn't happy. That
Hmm.
was what was a little more eye-opening for me. And I realized I was actually really proud of myself. I slept better. I had more
Yeah.
energy. I just had better mental clarity, to be
Oh,
honest,
totally.
when I was actually fueling my body. And then I was able to go push myself even harder in the gym and lift
Hmm.
better and perform better in all aspects of that and in my life. Even when I was still working in the college, I just felt more confident. I stood a little
Hmm.
taller. I was really proud of how I was able to carry myself because
Hmm.
of now this education and this knowledge that food isn't the enemy. It's how we break it down and how we actually use it for our body.
Right. And talk about, I mean, how miserable is that to be restricting Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday? I mean, aren't you're in constant pain. And the irony is what you're trying to restrict from is food. But is there anything else you're thinking about besides food during the time of restrict? I mean, right?
Oh, yeah. I always say, I don't like to say you can't have the cake because if I say you can't have the cake, that's all you want.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you can say, if I really, really, really want some cake, how do I balance that out with everything else that I'm gonna eat? I'm not gonna just say, forget the day, it's ruined because I had a slice of cake. It really isn't. It is a minuscule amount in the grand scheme of things, but my day does not revolve around having one slice of cake and then trying to be perfect the rest or restrict the
Mhm.
rest. It's about like, okay, how can I create balance throughout my day and throughout my week that allows me to enjoy things I do enjoy. I actually don't enjoy cake. Mine is chips and salsa.
Right.
I can go down on some chips and salsa, but
Hmm.
like I want to make sure that I'm having adequate protein because more than likely when you're restricting probably the good things that would actually benefit you. And the one thing I want to say when I was going through my journey of learning about nutrition was I actually had to start eating more
Talk about how
because,
scary that was.
oh, that's so
Talk about
scary.
that.
I remember when my coach was like, "Yeah, we're gonna bump up your calories a couple hundred calories this week," and I'm like, no, like what are you thinking?" And
Yeah.
she's like, "Trust me on this." But
That's the opposite of what I'm going to do.
exactly. And so I was very like scared to do it, but then it was amazing. She would have me do some high days on my higher load days, like for example, on heavy leg days, and then maybe back it off on upper body days. And that's pretty complicated. We don't need to get into all that. But I would notice on those extra calorie days, one, how much more energy I had, but then two, my lifts were so phenomenal that it
Mhm.
was just exciting. And with that extra energy that I'm able to put into my workouts, I was able to actually become leaner. I was building lean muscle mass.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you've talked about it on your podcast, but the more lean muscle mass you have, the more your metabolic rate goes up. So
Right.
you're actually burning more energy just as you're sitting here because
Yeah.
your lean muscle mass is more. So
Mm-hmm.
muscle actually takes more energy to maintain than fat
Mm-hmm.
does. Fat takes
Hmm.
literally barely any energy
Yeah.
to have
Hmm.
on our bodies. But if we can have that lean muscle mass, now we're talking. Like we're literally
Right.
a machine at that point.
Yeah, you're a burning machine.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to one thing you mentioned about you encourage balance, which on the outside sounds like the normal right thing to do. But for people like, well, I'll just use myself for an example because
Yep.
I am high on the sugar addiction scale. I
Yeah.
could never have a piece of cake. I mean, there's no such thing as in singular, piece of cake. I would be back up at the cake table trying to
Right.
sneak two or three more pieces
Mm-hmm.
till I was too sick to want more. So how do you have you maybe you haven't worked with people that struggle in that way, but if so, what does that look like in your conversations with them?
What I've found with some of my clients that have had like those, like, I just can't have enough sugar.
Mm-hmm.
I am not, that is not in my scope of practice to be able to treat or
Mm-hmm.
help people with those real food addictions.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have found for some clients that has helped immensely is I focus so much on the protein intake. And a lot of times when we can get that protein up, n- your body is talking to you. Your body is so smart. And
Ain't it?
and most of the times when we have these impulse, cravings, or we just can't get enough, it's more than likely because your body's saying I'm lacking something.
Mm-hmm.
And so um a lot of my girls who have increased their protein and are working really well in the gym with strength training, and
Mm-hmm.
they see that transformation, because a lot of times they're coming brand new to the gym and then also adding in maybe a nutrition piece, and they are loving what they're feeling in the gym. They want to capitalize on doing even more. And so
Mm-hmm.
I always start with protein. And more times than not do they tell me, I can't believe you eat this much protein in a day. Like, that feels like a full-time job. And it kind of is, because if you're truly eating enough protein to sustain and maintain and even build lean muscle mass, it is quite a lot. And so it doesn't, I'm not saying if somebody has a real food addiction that it cures that, because I don't have that background or scope of knowledge. But for those that have had those cravings, especially sugar ones, they've noticed a decrease when we've
Nice.
increased that protein.
Well, yeah, and it just goes to show that the more sometimes I like to approach things like, okay, we're not going to take out the sugar, we're just going to add in these other beautiful elements that naturally crowd out. So it doesn't look like you're restricting, you're just focusing on the good things that you want to add in to your
Absolutely.
diet. So,
And I'll say, like, if that's something that we don't, and I'm very much on your page of, let's not just start taking things out.
mhm,
That's like the common thing to do. And then where we end up, we were in back into the endless cycle that you're in. And
right.
so how do we add in things that are good for us, while not necessarily taking away the things that we deem as necessarily unhealthy at this point,
Mhm.
and start adding
Mhm.
in like little, nuggets of really good things. And as you build up those really good habits, more than likely, sometime those bad habits just kind of naturally start
Right.
dissipating or
Mhm.
becoming more or smaller in our life. And for my girls that really want to capitalize on getting stronger in the gym, I'll say, okay, have a protein, and then work in your sweet treats that you want around that, because that's actually going to put glycogen back into your body, but you can still enjoy it in that time frame. But let's also look at your whole day and be putting really good foods in our bodies to make sure that we can sustain. So it's not about restricting, but it is about creating a healthier outlook on what your day and your patterns can look like.
Yeah, and I do want to say too that the more that we get on the whole foods, your taste buds change and it will dramatically just start pulling you back to those natural foods. And that will also help decrease cravings for
Yeah.
people. And for those, or sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, Andrea, like she talks about this a lot, how, when somebody first comes to her really needing to do a more restrictive, because they have chronic illnesses or diseases,
Hmm.
and they absolutely have to cut out, and it is restrictive. Foods don't taste as good at first, and then
Hmm.
as they start that journey, and Andrea, you can talk to it more too if you would want, but as they start that journey and they start repeating, what they can eat to heal their body, and they start feeling better, then those taste buds start, just
Coming back.
exploding with
Hmm.
like things that they didn't even think that would taste good before, and now they're tasting amazing. And then they might go back to something that they used to have and be like, wow, I thought this tasted good. Like, that doesn't actually taste good. That's like trash. It tastes like
Yeah.
plastic in my mouth, to be really
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, yeah. Because there probably is. There
Yeah, it
probably is some
probably is.
plastic in there, it's in everything. But yeah, your taste buds really do get back to that natural factory settings, and life becomes a lot more beautiful. You talked a little bit about balance, which I think is important in our life. And so when people that, well, really a lot of people that you work with that are probably very, very into health probably fear getting off plan a little bit. And I would say that people that are struggling to get off sugar and processed food too also fear getting off plan. So what does it actually look like to get back on, I'm going to do say back on track in real life? If you have a little sidestep, how do you counsel people with that? Because we're not robots. We
Mm-mm.
are human beings. We're going to have vacations or parties or things like that, holidays. It's very difficult to manage all that and be perfect with all these big super goals in mind. So how do you help people through those types of periods in their life?
I always remind them that we can't be perfect. Nobody can be perfect. And so perfection is not the goal. It's that consistency that
Hmm.
is the goal. And consistency for me is, I can enjoy my chips and salsa, but it's not something I'm just going to gorge on every day. I can enjoy them at the moment, and I always prioritize protein. You will hear me talk about protein till my ears bleed, because protein is just so important for the body. And thankfully, research has just been coming out on how vital and important that is. But I'll be say that is a blimp. That is a moment in history. That is not what derailed you to begin with. It was having those off plan meals so often that they became norms.
Yeah, they're your new plan.
They're your new plan. And so you're not ever off plan. Now that's just your
Yeah, yeah,
plan.
yeah. Now
And
you switch
so
plans.
yeah, we just labeled it something else. So it and that's where I go back to the mind. The mind is so powerful too, where if we said, "Oh, I was bad today. I was really bad today," that tells my brain, that sends a chemical that says, "Oh, you better restrict." And so you kind of go into that survival mode. And
Mm.
so instead of saying I was bad today, you could rephrase it and said, I chose to have that. Now, what am I going to do to move on from that? And it's not going to be a restriction. Now it's going to be like, let's just get back on the saddle. If you've got kicked off the horse, get right back on the saddle and do it again. And more as it becomes a muscle memory, as your brain
Mhm.
becomes stronger through those, you know, quote unquote off plans, and you just get right back on the saddle and get back onto your plan, that becomes a stronger muscle that you, over time, because muscles don't get strong tomorrow, they get strong over time, then those quote unquote off plans more than likely become way less frequent, and they don't actually derail you as much because they're so few and far between now that that's not the norm anymore.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, using your chips and salsa example, it sounds like you have the capability of having that on occasion and able to bounce right back to plan, where somebody, like if they did that with sugar, it might turn into a week-long, month-long, year-long slide backwards into sugar. So
Mm.
how do you feel? I like to say, know thy triggers, know what you're capable of, know where what you can and can't do. Like for me, I do like balance, but I do know that chocolate chip cookies just aren't, I just can't go there because I don't know what will happen on the other side.
Oh, right.
I might be okay, but it's too scary and I don't want the monsters to come out. So
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
don't.
And I'll be honest, I'm definitely a sustainer. I don't, thankfully, I do not have as much of a food pull.
Noise. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that food noise. I've really been able to learn how food is a fuel for my body, and how I truly feel so much better when I'm eating, a more balanced and nutritious diet. And I feel for those though that do
Yeah.
have that noise, because that is a real thing,
Brutal.
and it is just like constant in here.
Hmm.
And maybe Andrea can get to this in her episode, or if this is a good time for it. But sometimes, we talk about our gut a lot in our episodes, because the gut is the second brain.
Hmm.
And so if we've been feeding it sugar and that's what we've been doing, more than likely there's not good microbiome down there that is
Totally.
causing us to have these insane cravings. Do you want to
Yeah.
speak to that at all, Andrea,
Yeah,
or
go
do you
ahead.
want to kind of touch in on that?
Yeah, there's really some interesting research, and I think I think we're kind of hitting on two things here. One is very organic and physical, and the other would be considered in the realm of maybe psychological, maybe
Mm,
dopaminergic kind of
Right.
activities in the realm of addiction. And so, from a physiological standpoint, there's a large body of research, and a lot of it is in mice. But I think it holds true with what we see in people. You can take the microbiome in an obese mouse, and you can transplant it into something called a gnotobiotic mouse, which is essentially a research mouse that has a sterile gut. And if you transplant the microbiome inhabitants from the obese mouse into the lean gnotobiotic mouse, that mouse will become obese.
Wow.
And then if you completely eradicate that microbiome and revert it back to a normal mouse microbiota, that mouse will become lean again. And so there
Oh,
are lots of triggers. We also have a good amount and growing of human data that is really confirming the same thing in people too. So yeah, lots of interesting connections there.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. We could go off on a whole nother tangent with the gut microbiome and
Mm-hmm.
how I was just interviewing somebody who's a specialist in the gut area, and
Mm.
she was explaining how all the cells in our intestinal lining hug one another literally. So that's, you've heard about leaky gut, and when
Yep.
you're eating the things you're supposed to be eating, it keeps the good things in and the bad stuff out. And whenever you start
Mm-hmm.
eating the bad stuff, that starts coming apart and things
Yeah.
ugly things start happening. I told her
Yeah.
for Valentine's week, I'm going to post a reel tonight about that, how then it becomes a group hug whenever you're feeding those the
I
gut
never
lining, all the
thought
good
about
stuff.
tight junctions as cells hugging each other, but I love that. That's
Yeah.
that's
But isn't
fantastic.
it
Yeah.
so spot on though?
Yeah.
At the love goes away
You're right. Yes, it does.
whenever you start
Yeah.
eating that junk that just absolutely destroys that
Yeah.
gut
Well,
microbiome.
and there's so many mechanisms by which the tight junctions break down, right? There's different types of pathogenic bacteria can secrete things called lipopolysaccharide, and you can get a dissolution of the gut barrier because of microbiota that are secreting just in the course of their normal metabolism. They're secreting these substances that break down our gut barriers. And interestingly, gluten is something that breaks down the gut barrier. It upregulates the protein. We have to be able to make the gut barrier permeable. That has to be
Mhm.
a function that we have. And there are lots of reasons for that, but it's a feature, not a bug, if you will, in
Mhm.
human physiology. So we have to have that ability. However, it's when we're unable to turn off and snap the gates back closed, that's when it becomes a problem. And gluten is one of the most common foods that will increase this protein that breaks down the gut barrier. Um, and so, anyway, if you think your nutritionist or your primary care or whoever is treating you, if you think they're a one trick pony telling you to get off of gluten, there's often a reason behind that. And certainly maintaining or reestablishing the gut barrier is a huge reason for that. So anyway, just
Yeah.
my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm getting off on a tangent here with the gluten. I was hearing from a friend of mine who had gone over to Italy and she was having pasta and bread and pizza and things like that. And she had a gluten intolerance. And she said, I had no problems when I was there. And so I thought, I must be cured. I don't have a gluten intolerance anymore. And so she came back to the United States after vacation. And she thought, well, I guess I can have bread now. And she said almost immediately her
Probably wrecked her
symptoms,
world.
yeah, because it's just so processed here
Yeah. Yeah.
compared
Yeah.
to
But
what's
lots of
happening over
reasons
there.
for that. Glyphosate is towards the top of the list. The way that we process grain. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic too, just the way that we process food here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I
Go
think
ahead.
that's probably why, like, processed food. I mean, if you get down to the simplicity of what processed food is, all even a recipe is technically processed, even if you used whole ingredients, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
putting them all together.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the basically the really very low quality foods that really have no nutritional value that really wreck our world and become super addictive. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's the plan because they can sell more and they can make us unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another tangent I won't get on, but
Yeah.
when we can eat just like your friend going to Italy, you have a higher quality of food
Yeah.
and you feel so good and that's what you
Mm-hmm.
desire. And so here, unfortunately, in America, that's just not as simple as being able to go to the grocery store and buying your off-the-shelf pastas like you can in,
Yeah.
say, Italy.
Yeah. Before we run out of time, and I want to respect your time, I want to talk about some non-negotiables that you have in your life. For us at Real Food Recovery, we have these core foundational principles of single ingredient food, sleep, movement, spirituality. Those are the things that help us stay on track and vital and nervous system regulation. What are the main areas of your life that support this clean lifestyle outside of food? We've talked about that, and your exercise. You pretty much have those two things down pat. What else? What are your non-negotiables in addition to that? To because you talked about balance a lot to keep this balanced life, so that you don't get overly obsessed with the gym and keep everything well-rounded in your life. And it sounds like you're married and have a family, so talk about that. What are your
Yeah.
non-negotiables?
Well, just because I own a fitness studio does not mean it's my what I, live and breathe. Literally, there has to be some um again balance. But no, some of my non-negotiables is one, making sure I'm well hydrated. I drink
Yeah.
water all day, and not just plain water. I make sure I have my electrolytes. Those things make me feel better. I've already handed it down. I make sure I eat my protein. But outside of just that nutrition piece, like I mentioned before, my faith is super big in my life. And I was raised in a Christian home, but I will tell you, we those are not necessarily healthy people, and that has also been a big passion that God calls us to a higher standard, even with how we treat our body, and the Bible talks so much about how we take care of our body and how we nourish it, and so as a Christian, those things I know are super important to myself, but they should be important because they're important to God. And so
Hmm.
my faith is super big. And then making sure that I'm surrounded by really good, influential people that want to encourage my journey. So I have people in my corner that want to see me succeed. And I think that's super important to surround yourself. And, over the course of my life, I was just talking with a client this morning about it, how she owns her own business as well. And she's having to let somebody go in her company that's like a sister to her. And she's like super sad about it, but it's important to have this stepping stone in her business because she's moving on. Like
Hmm.
she's not the right fit. And I kind of think back on my life and how people have come into my life and I thought this was going to be a lifelong relationship, and they had my back for certain things in my life, but then they didn't have them for others. And as I started getting healthier and I started able to think clearly, it wasn't necessarily about me severing those relationships, but those relationships naturally just dissipated.
Yeah.
And it was really hard at first to see those friendships go because I thought that they were going to be my people. I thought we were going to do
Hmm.
life together. And
Yeah.
what I found is when I did allow those to kind of not force those relationships anymore, more people that actually came into my corner came into my life. And
Mm.
maybe it's for a season. Maybe it's just to get me through this next growing phase. But I really do believe having people that want to cheer you on and want to see you be held accountable, because that's the uncomfortableness too, is having people that can actually hold you accountable. Andrea is my accountability. She will call me out on things, and I do the same for her. And I don't have any other friend like her, literally, because we've gotten to the point where we can just be like, that was kind of BS, Ashley. Like, you should do better, you know. Don't trick yourself into thinking that you're doing good just by framing it. So again, having people in your corner is really important.
Yeah, I love that answer. I want to finish with this. We had a listener question that I thought was really important, and I'd like for you to speak to this. They said, how do I trust my body again after years of dieting? I'm scared to trust myself. I'm afraid of what might happen if I'm not on a restrictive diet.
That's a
Ouch.
that's a big one.
Huge.
Yeah. Um, So you already know what it's like to be on a restrictive diet. It's probably miserable. You're
Yeah.
probably wondering if you're ever going to be able to enjoy life, if you're ever going to be able to go to a Christmas party and not feel like you just need to eat the entire, buffet table so that way you can go home and start restricting again. And so you already know what that feels like. What if you tried to do something different? What if you tried baby stepping out of this restrictive cycle that has kept you in misery? And to that note, too, maybe you don't need to focus on the diet at first. Maybe you need to start getting outside and walking. Maybe you
Mhm.
need to get some fresh air. Maybe you need to have those small wins. I'm all about small wins. And
Mhm.
so maybe it's having some, whole chicken breast or something for lunch once a day. Just do that once a day. And maybe it's adding a veggie for the first time to your normal dinner, whatever that looked like. And so starting with those small things, and then your body is so amazing and it's so wanting to serve you. And it's so wanting to do the things that you are truly capable of, but your restrictions are limiting your true potential.
Okay.
And you know, start taking those baby steps. Find a friend, find an accountability partner that you can be like, hey, my goal is to get outside one time this week, just once, and do a 10-minute walk. Maybe that's all you can think of. Like that's all the brain can handle to even comprehend. And have a friend that can actually hold you to that and maybe even do it with you. Um, and then start with those small ones. So maybe you do one walk outside a week for a while, and that becomes easy. Now you're like, well,
Mhm.
I can do one walk. Maybe I can do two. Maybe I can do three. And then maybe I can start doing some body weight things at the house if I don't feel comfortable going to the gym yet. And the other thing I'm so big on, and that's why I opened Car Fitness, is it's a women's only fitness studio. Go find a place in your city that you actually feel comfortable, welcomed,
Yeah.
and received just as you are,
Mhm.
not who they think that you should fit the mold to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Be-
Would your sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
Would your advice be any different for since we do emphasize movement a lot in our community, would your advice be any different than that for someone who says, I'd like to start adding movement in my life, but I don't even know where to start and it's scary and I don't want to be sore
Yep.
and I don't want to quit and
Yeah. And I tell my girls, new girls especially, all the time, I'm like, my goal is that you aren't sore all the time. If you
yeah.
are,
Uh-huh.
then we're moving too fast. May not be getting enough recovery time because maybe we are moving too fast. And then maybe we're not fueling our body properly, right?
Yeah.
Because those
Mhm.
all things come into play. So yes, if you're brand new to movement and have no idea, there walking is so underrated. Like
I
there's
agree.
so much good that can come into walking, and then to even put make it even better, put the cherry on top, if you will. Go outside and do it. You
Hmm.
and
Double
I
bonus.
heard this on I think a podcast maybe once, but they said if you get so bored or you don't know what to do with your time outside and you don't necessarily want to listen to a podcast. I love silence. I will drive in my car in silence. I love going on walks in silence. I just love it. But some people
Hmm.
just can't handle that silence. So somebody said pick a color that you want to focus on your walk and just go
Oh.
start finding that color wherever you're at. So
Mhm.
maybe your color is yellow and maybe if you're listening to this in the spring there's flowers blooming. Go
Yeah.
find all the yellow flowers and start
Yeah.
counting how many you find. Or
Hmm.
maybe an easy one is green. How many green things can you find on your
Yeah.
walk? How about blue? Even on a cloudy day, there's got to be blue houses or blue cars or something out there. And so it
Hmm.
kind of becomes a game. I don't know if you ever played the game like the ABC game in the car on road
Hmm.
trips, because back in my day, we did not have iPads um, or TVs to entertain us in the
Right.
car. We would find license plates or, street signs and do the ABCs. So make it enjoyable. Actually, one of my clients, she's been with me for over 7 years now, and she's always wanting to like ride her bike or push herself a little extra. And she's done awesome. We've gotten her from hunched over her wheelchair to being able to walk
Oh.
without it
Ah,
completely. But she wants to keep, getting better, especially as she ages. She's in her late 70s now. And so she loves ducks. So a couple weeks ago, I was like, why don't we get some fun duck stickers and a fun calendar? And every time you do something extra, you get a duck. Like, how
oh,
simple
great.
is that?
That's
That
great.
has been life changing for her.
I
She,
love games.
so I was like, how many? So today I saw her and she's like, I was like, how many ducks did you get this weekend? And she's like, and then she told me all the things that she got to do, get a duck for. It's like parking extra for, a few
Yeah,
stalls extra in the parking lot. Maybe not
amazing.
taking the scooter to get her groceries. Now she's pushing her cart.
Nice.
Those things seem so minuscule, but they're giving her a new lease on
Huge,
life and she's getting so much more
huge.
confident. And she's like, guess what I did today? And I'm
Hmm.
like, that is so amazing.
That's beautiful. What a beautiful story to end on. I love that. And those little tiny tricks like that absolutely change the mind shift. That we're out here doing this game. We're not out here taking a walk. We're fitting in a walk around this fun dopamine producing game that we're doing.
Yes.
And we're getting physical activity. We're getting serotonin and endorphins and everything as we're
All the
outside.
good
So,
things.
yeah. Well, this has been a pleasure. Man, that hour has gone fast.
I told you
And
we like to talk.
yeah, this is just part one, people. So lean in. Part two will be next time with Andrea, where we will be talking about recovery redefined, healing to live. Andrea, do you want to give any teasers about that before you come on next time?
All I can say is opposites attract. Ashley, Ashley and I, like, we're alike in a lot of ways, but in terms of our experiences and backgrounds, I think could not be more different. So
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's a wild ride.
Well, I'm very, very interested to have our next conversation with you, and I'm sure our audience will love that too. And Ashley, do you want to tell people where they can find you? I will also put it in the show notes, but feel free to go ahead and promote yourself real fast.
Oh, thank you so much. You can find me at carvefitness.co on Instagram and even on the webs. And yeah, and then the Double A podcast is the podcast that Andrea and I do. And you can find it on any of the listening platforms that you listen to your favorite podcasts like this one. So,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
yes.
Perfect. And if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number four and the letter U. And our book, Real Food Recovery, If Food Isn't the Answer, What's the Question, is on Amazon today. Thanks so much, guys. See you next time. Bye bye.